Have you ever wondered what Jesus really looked like? Was his appearance as we commonly imagine? Or could history tell a different story? There's a remarkable account, said to be written by Pontius Pilate himself, describing Jesus' physical appearance, his miracles, and even his resurrection, details we don't find in the Gospels. What could Pilate, a Roman governor, have revealed about the man he sentenced to die? Stay with us as we uncover this fascinating letter, filled with hidden insights about Jesus' life and the mysterious events that changed history forever. You won't want to miss a single detail. Pilate's account hints at a Jesus who was both familiar and profoundly different from the figure later depicted in Christian doctrine. Descriptions of Jesus' appearance and character challenge popular images that have been passed down over centuries. Moreover, Pilate's letter addresses a range of mysterious and miraculous occurrences, including his own eerie impressions of Jesus and the remarkable calm he exuded amid growing hostility. Pilate's own internal conflict is palpable as he grapples with the political and philosophical weight of Jesus' presence in Jerusalem. Pilate's first impressions of Jerusalem and the Jewish leaders. Pilate first arrived in Jerusalem, he was greeted not with fanfare but with suspicion and hostility. Unlike most Roman provinces, where rule was maintained through fear and military might, Judea required an even more delicate approach. Pilate was immediately aware that his authority was undermined by the high priests and their council, the Sanhedrin. This body wielded significant influence over the people, often using religious law to counter Roman rule. One of Pilate's earliest interactions with the Jewish leaders set the tone for his governorship. After taking over the praetorium, he hosted a banquet, inviting local leaders, including the high priest, to foster goodwill. Yet when no one attended, Pilate perceived it as a direct insult. Shortly afterward, the high priest did visit him, but only to offer an excuse. He claimed that their faith forbade them from dining with Gentiles. Pilate noted the insincerity in his eyes, realizing that these religious leaders held no allegiance to Rome and harbored their own political agendas. The seed of mistrust between Pilate and Jerusalem's elite was sown. Pilate's introduction to Jesus, against this backdrop of tension, Pilate began hearing rumors of a man from Galilee named Jesus, who was teaching a doctrine unlike any other. While initially skeptical, Pilate grew curious. Jesus was gathering crowds, yet his message seemed non-violent and strangely devoid of political ambition. Pilate's concern softened as he learned that Jesus' teachings in some ways actually upheld Roman authority. One day, Pilate observed Jesus from a distance. Surrounded by followers, Jesus' calm and composed demeanor immediately set him apart. Pilate saw in him a unique figure, one who exuded wisdom and inner strength that commanded respect, not through force or wealth, but through an aura of peace. This was not a man calling for rebellion, rather he appeared as a sage. Intrigued, Pilate decided to keep an eye on Jesus, sending his trusted secretary to observe Jesus' teachings firsthand. Jesus' teachings and Pilate's surprising reaction. Reports from Pilate's secretary, a man named Manlius who spoke Hebrew, confirmed Pilate's sense of Jesus' integrity. The teachings of Jesus struck Pilate as astonishingly wise, even by the standards of Greek and Roman philosophy. One particular statement stood out. When asked by a zealot if it was lawful to pay taxes to Caesar, Jesus replied, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God what is God's." Pilate, a Roman by birth and authority, found himself deeply moved. Jesus was neither inciting rebellion nor questioning Rome's right to govern. Instead, he taught of a higher allegiance, one to a spiritual authority beyond earthly empires. Pilate's respect for Jesus grew, and he resolved to offer him the freedom to speak without interference. Pilate's decision was rooted in the Roman principle of justice, which he held dear. Jesus, in his view, was no ordinary rabble-rouser, but a philosopher and a teacher whose words could enlighten rather than inflame. The encounter between Jesus and Pilate When Pilate and Jesus finally met face to face, the experience left Pilate profoundly shaken. Standing on the balcony as Jesus approached, Pilate felt an inexplicable force render him almost immobile, as if a weight was bearing down on him. Jesus, in stark contrast, was calm, embodying a peace that seemed to transcend the turmoil around him. Pilate would later describe this moment as unlike any he had ever known. Jesus' demeanor was not one of defiance, but of serene acceptance, and Pilate sensed an unsettling purity in him. In a voice tinged with reverence, Pilate addressed Jesus, even going as far as comparing his teachings to those of Socrates and Plato. Yet, despite his admiration, Pilate could not ignore the political reality. He warned Jesus about his enemies' growing animosity, urging him to moderate his speech for his own safety. Jesus, however, responded cryptically, speaking of destiny and divine will, hinting that his fate was beyond any earthly control. Political pressures and rising tensions. As the Jewish festival of Passover approached, Jerusalem became a pressure cooker of tensions. The city overflowed with pilgrims, and the people's frustration with Roman rule was palpable. The high priests, aware of Jesus' popularity and the threat they felt he posed to their authority, seized the opportunity to incite the people against him. Rumors spread of bribes paid to stir the crowds into demanding Jesus' crucifixion. Pilate faced mounting pressure from the religious authorities who, in a rare moment of unity, aligned themselves against Jesus. The charges they brought against Jesus were serious, accusing him of blasphemy and claiming that he referred to himself as the Son of God, a king. Pilate, however, struggled to see Jesus as a political threat. He reminded the crowd that under Roman law, crimes of religious nature alone were not punishable by death. Yet, the cries for crucifixion only grew louder. Pilate's attempts to save Jesus in an effort to calm the mob and avoid condemning an innocent man, Pilate devised a solution. He offered the people a choice, as was custom during the Passover, to release a prisoner of their choosing. He presented Jesus alongside Barabbas, a known insurrectionist, assuming the people would prefer to spare the peaceful teacher over the violent rebel. To his astonishment, the crowd called for Barabbas's release and continued to demand Jesus' crucifixion. Pilate grew desperate, attempting to remind the people of their own legal processes, which required fasting, witnesses, and review before any execution. He hoped these reminders would prompt the crowd to reconsider. When all efforts failed, he ordered Jesus to be flogged, hoping that the spectacle of his suffering might evoke pity. However, even this brutal punishment did not soften their resolve. The crucifixion decision and Pilate's final reflections, realizing that he could not sway the crowd and fearing an uprising, Pilate made the fateful decision to authorize Jesus' crucifixion. Yet even in this act, Pilate distanced himself, symbolically washing his hands before the crowd, proclaiming that he bore no responsibility for Jesus' death. This gesture, intended as an absolution of guilt, only highlighted his own helplessness and internal conflict. Pilate's reflections after the event were haunted by a deep sense of unease. He had witnessed mob fury before, but had never encountered anything as intense as the scene that day in Jerusalem. He was left with an unsettling awareness that he had been a part of something far greater than mere politics. Jesus' final prophecy to him that his blood would not be shed, but that of the righteous one would, haunted Pilate, suggesting that fate and divine will had been at work. Conclusion: the legacy of Pilate's letter and questions it raises. Pilate's letter, if genuine, offers a powerful and personal insight into the days leading up to one of history's most significant events. This account raises questions that have puzzled historians, theologians, and believers alike. Was Jesus perceived as a spiritual teacher or a political threat? Did Pilate himself sense the importance of the man he ultimately condemned? Through his portrayal of Jesus, Pilate inadvertently acknowledges a shift from Rome's earthly rule to a kingdom he could not fully comprehend. In the end, Pilate's letter captures a moment where the values of the Roman Empire collided with the teachings of a man whose legacy would far outlast its own. It offers a rare glimpse into the mind of a conflicted governor who, faced with the fervor of a city on the brink of revolt, struggled to balance justice, politics, and his own conscience. The letter serves as both a historical document and a philosophical reflection on the mysterious, enduring figure of Jesus and the choices that continue to resonate across centuries.